Well, hello, folks. Welcome back to WW2 TV and an impromptu, as they often are, Ask Me Anything. And the show on the Hurtgen Forest, don't know what was going on. I just kind of lost contact with Robert about 24 hours ago. I will try and reschedule. It won't be for a few days because I'm off going to England to see my folks. But anyway, we'll do an Ask Me Anything. Won't be here for ages and ages because, frankly, I want to get on with some work. I've got lots of shorts I want to get scheduled to be playing and going up on the channel when I'm away. So that's it. That's what I'm doing over the next few hours. So I wasn't prepared for this. That's why I'm just flanneling, and I don't know what I'm talking about now. I was all sitting ready to sit back and just listen to what Robert was going to say. I'd seen all the maps, so I was completely unprepared for this right now. But anyway, good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. So we've got a few questions in already. I'll start with some of them. And Stuart Burbridge, how am I enjoying WW2TV and am I learning much? Yes. Although there's a couple of shows I haven't actually watched yet because I tend to schedule the shows, or Lucy schedules the shows when I'm doing something else, and I just go back and watch them. There will be some news about WW2TV coming March, but that will be kind of March time. It's to do with the fact we may need to find someone else to help with the co-hosting or something because Lucy's just crazy busy. But I will let you know about that in due course. But it's going to be carrying on, and yes, I am learning a lot, and I am enjoying it, and great. So there we are. Terry Down, what is the airspeed of an African swallow? So you've done all the jokes in a side already, European or African, laden or unladen. I have seen on YouTube someone had some footage of a swallow actually carrying, I don't think it was a coconut, I think it was something smaller like a kiwi fruit or something, and it was one of those videos that went viral. So someone captured some footage of a swallow carrying some kind of fruit, nut or something, and it was grabbing it by the husk, if I remember, or kind of the stalk bit. So Monty Python question done. James Murphy, were there any designated camouflage units? A nice topical question. Yes, there were actually. And in fact, the reason it's topical is coming up in February, I have a week of shows called Spies, Secrets, and Subterfuge, which is kind of a general broad heading to kind of cover a variety of things. One of the shows is going to be about a former British First World War naval hero who was a spy for the Japanese in Beverly Hills. But Rick Bayer, who's been a friend of mine for years, who wrote a fantastic book and indeed produced a documentary about Ghost Army, is coming on as a guest. His book has just had a new edition, and they are one of the American units that I think people tend to think of the camouflage units as that kind of pre-D-Day Operation Fortitude, inflatable Sherman tanks, things like that. But there were camouflage units that went over to the ETO, and that's what Rick focused on. And the Germans had sort of deception stroke camouflage units. I will tell you a funny story, while it's mildly amusing. I was on Omaha Beach at Widerstandsee 65 by the bunker there that has a list of units that were attached to the Engineer Brigade. And I was with a group including some veterans of Omaha Beach, including some veterans of the Engineer Brigade. And two of the veterans are going down, reading out loud all the various units. So, engineers, quartermaster, blah, blah, blah. And they got to the camouflage unit. I think it was the 402nd. And one of them said, I didn't know we had a camouflage unit in our brigade. And the other guy said, well, we obviously just didn't see them. And we all had a good chuckle. So I thought that was quite amusing. But camouflage is definitely something that I want to be tackling as a complete week of programming at some point in the future. I'm actually thinking as far ahead as 2025 right now. I know we've only just started this year. The reason I'm thinking as far ahead as next year is that after kind of August next year, we run out of 80th anniversary things to cover, although we could start going into displacement camps and indeed war trials and returning servicemen going back home, economics, I suppose, but we kind of lose that anniversaries of battle. So I'm thinking of some weeks that we can do next year and indeed the year after, 2026, because there'll be no anniversaries then, although I suppose we could go back to the Spanish Civil War. But anyway, and one of the subjects I'm thinking of is camouflage. We could look at the development of camouflage uniforms. The Germans are probably kind of leagues ahead in some ways, although so many different patterns, it was a big production issue. Americans, Marines using camouflage. British a bit slower out of the gate there, but then there is the Denison smoke and windproof smoke. So we can talk about uniforms. We could also talk about camouflage on ships, the various patterns, dazzle patterns and things like that that the Royal Navy and other navies use. So camouflage is definitely something that we could look at in the future. I think there's enough there, enough scope to do a whole week on that in the future. Andreas is asking, what's the book I've read recently that made me question my knowledge most? Well, at the moment, kind of all my books make me question my knowledge, really. And as I always say, when I was talking to Brad the other day, it's whatever you've just read, whatever you've just seen. But right now, among the things I'm learning about, I've got a pile of books by my desk, as I always have. And again, this is going to connect to a show that is going to be scheduled fairly soon. Delivering Destruction, American Firepower and Amphibious Assault from Tarawa to Iwo Jima. Chris Hemler is coming on. So this is the idea of combined firepower approach. So using air power, navy power and everything to kind of bombard the hell out of these islands as they attack them. And I'm learning that, although I suppose I knew it already, but it's having it in one place, I'm learning that there was doctrine, there was development. They are looking at it. They're looking at, saturation patterns of artillery. They're looking at how they can improve the communication. And I think it's an oft said thing on this channel. We tend to think of those amphibious landings in terms of those Marines or armor units running up the beaches. And we forget, or we tend to overlook, that massive, great support element behind it. When Alex Churchill was on a few weeks ago talking about Tarawa, the focus is on those men on the beaches there in the palm trees. But yeah, there was plan behind it. A lot of that planning, a lot of that how not to do things, learnt in the Guadalcanal Solomon Islands campaign. That's where the Americans, in their part of the battle there in the islands, and the Australians over in New Guinea, kind of learn how to use their possibly superior firepower in that theatre of operations. So that was interesting. I'm also having a little look again at Footsloggers by Peter Hart, about the 16th Durham Light Infantry, because Peter's going to come on in Anzio week and talk about the infantry slogging over another ridgeline in Italy. And just the realization, I'm a little bit, to answer your question, Andreas, in a kind of roundabout way, those of you who watch me a lot, I'm quite cynical about oral histories. I'm quite cynical about just letting veterans rabbit on about anything, because, we talked about it with Brad. They do remember things wrong, but Peter is the master of using oral histories the way they should be used. So just the experiences in terms of the emotion, what it's like having explosions, shatter debris over your head. And Peter does that. He fills in the framework of where the battalion is going and what they're doing but he uses the voices correctly to fill in that gap of understanding that we need of what was it like to be there. So Peter makes me remember that oral histories are a valuable tool in the cupboard of the historian, but to be used for the right function if we're going to carry on with the tool analogy. So that's something there that I think is a lesson I'm learning from just rereading Peter Hart. And Peter's just such a great value guy. So next question, and I realize there's probably more coming in, but whatever. I'll look at that. This is one from Mark Loop. If Frank Whittle had the same backing in the UK as Otto von Ohain had with Heinkel, do you think it would have impacted the war? I don't know enough about that to give you an answer. I do tend to think in very basic terms that the British and Americans divided their focus quite neatly, in that the Americans were going to go for the atomic program and the British were going to go for jets. Although I've got a show I'm scheduling with Larry Ferrero, who did the show about American Churchill's Arsenal. He's doing one about the British involvement in the Manhattan Project, that we tend to think, with the recent Oppenheimer film, we tend to think of it as being mostly American with a few Europeans, but there was a big British part of that. And so he's going to come on and talk about that as an American. So, yeah, I mean, Air Force isn't my specialty. I just do think it is amazing when you think of the Royal Air Force in 1939, where there were still biplanes in their hundreds in service there. And by 1945, we have jets. I mean, that's 6 years of aviation technological improvements is amazing. I mean, yeah, you could argue the Germans are doing exactly the same thing, and in fact, they're probably further ahead than us because in 1939 they are maybe a little bit ahead of the game. But yeah, that as a historian, the 6 years of aviation improvements during World War II are astounding. I mean, it's a generation before. Who was it we were talking about? Hap Arnold, I think it was. Hap Arnold was taught to fly by the Wright brothers or something like that. So, you know, we think of these World War II guys in charge of thousands of bombers. And literally just a generation earlier, we were going into the air the very first time. And a generation after, we were sending men into space and getting them on the moon. I mean, it's extraordinary. I'm going into kind of a philosophical thing about technology, but that aspect, when you think about artillery, if History Explorer was watching, artillery is basically the same now as it was several hundred years ago. The guidance systems are better and the observation is better, but tubes that lob something out of them at the enemy haven't changed substantially in hundreds of years. And yet aviation and drones now has gone on massively. Anyway, that's answered that one by not answering it. Leslie, what am I doing over D-Day? I'm basically keeping my dance card free for hoping media work. What usually happens in Woody's world is if I take tours on and agree to go to places, I get calls at the last minute saying, can you do some stuff for Sky? Can you do stuff for BBC? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm too busy because I committed to stuff. If I keep my calendar clear for media stuff, I don't get any calls and I end up sitting on my Jack Jones doing nothing. So hopefully, as it's the 80th and I've got a little bit of a profile now, I will get some media work. That's what I would like to do. So kind of, call into whatever radio stations, TV stations, and kind of be a roving Johnny on the spot here. My problem with guiding is that, and I have friends who are taking on tours around that period, is you're just not certain what you can achieve. The road closures, the traffic, the amount of people going to be here. So I don't like saying, yeah, I'll give you a tour and then be stuck in one place. I don't like, as a professional, not being able to give people what they want. So I don't like touring down then. So if I don't end up having media work and I won't have taken any tours on, I'll probably just go and do stuff. Just try and spend the day in, Arromanches or a day in Pegasus Bridge. I mean, I won't try and move around anywhere. I'll just try and go somewhere and be there all day, basically, and just kind of soak it up. But I'm one of those people, I've said about it before. I love the anniversaries and I hate them at the same time. I love the extra people who are here who are passionate about history and the tour groups and veterans and historians, all that. Some of the circus that arrives in all shapes and forms kind of just annoys me a bit. So yeah, I'll be doing that. But while I've been answering those questions, it looks like a cajillion more have come in. So I'll have to scroll back now and see what other things are coming in. I can't get to all of your questions because that's the thing about getting a little bit more popular now. When I did these in the beginning, there were like 7 of you watching, and now we've got 165 people according to my viewers. So that's good, but it means I can't get to all your so let's have a look at them all. So Terry Dan, have I done a segment on my relative in the Royal Ulster Rifles? No, not really. I've been on other people's podcasts and talked about the Royal Ulster Rifles. But no, not really. We did an Operation Charmwood show, one of the live ones with Mag on the ground, probably 3 years ago, where we talked about my great uncle Cyril moving into Caen on July, the 8th and 9th. We talked about that. But no, I haven't. I don't know why, really. I think it's because I just like to be the host and have a guest to come on. Yeah, I should do that. Yeah. Yes, Susan, lots of great guests coming up. As always, I'm just constantly in contact with people and trying to find out more people. And it's harder in some ways than it was at the beginning, because I do try and group my shows together in theme weeks, but that means you've got to work on people's availability and hope they're available that particular week. During the lockdown era, when things started, of course, everybody was available all the time, but teachers are back at teaching again, and people are traveling again. So the actual organizing of the timetable and the schedule takes a lot of time and a back and forth. And what happens is, you send people, I send them an email saying, are you available on, May the 15th? And they say, come back and say yes, but someone else has already replied to another email and also selected May the 15th. So you have to kind of go back to someone and say, can you do a different day? And it's why sometimes I end up doing two in the same day, because I can't get the schedules to work out. But hey, it's fun. Are the shorts working for me? That's the shorts as in the 1 minute long videos on YouTube, as opposed to the wonderful shorts I'm wearing right now. I'm not really wearing shorts. It's a bit cold. Yeah, they are. I was loath to start doing the shorts. I wanted to stick stubbornly to what I had been doing, which is these long format shows. And then I was talking to Brad and a few other people on their channels, and I realized I've got to kind of bend a bit and go with what YouTube wants. And I was under the impression that people who watch shorts would just watch the shorts and then, bugger off somewhere else. But what's actually happening is some people are watching the shorts and just buggering off somewhere else, but others are going on, discovering the channel and watching the long format shows. So they are bringing people in and keeping them here for the longer format shows. The thing about the shorts is you make like a 100th of what you make in terms of advertising revenue than you do on the normal long format shows. They're terrible for earning, but they're quite good for exposure. And I've got this software now where I can just put in the URLs of previous shows, and it kind of shuffles through and puts all the text in, kind of makes the shorts for me, and then I just have to adjust them and make some extra ones. And I made 10 today with Stephen McLeod about the 4th Marines landing on Saipan. So I'll be uploading some of them, and Steve McLeod is coming back on in Pacific Week to talk about the landings on Roy Namur, which is one of those islands in the Marshalls that they landed on 80 years ago in February. So, I'll scroll down a bit. What single World War II site you have not seen would you like to visit? There's places I'd like to go that probably aren't very visually exciting, like El Alamein, in the kind of flat railway station in the middle of a desert. I would like to get there at some point. Trevor Sheehan has really made me think about going to Tunisia and seeing some of that battlefield there. I think I would like to see Iwo Jima, but that's pretty much impossible because I'm a Brit and only Americans can go there on that one day a year. So I've kind of given up on that one. And frankly, I don't deal with hot weather very well. So the idea of going to Pacific, I think I'd like to, but I don't know. I suppose, and this is again going to be very difficult for the foreseeable future, is Stalingrad, that kind of area there. Get into the Eastern Front a bit. Too many to mention. There's so many sites I'd still like to go to. So there we go. So Julio, as I said earlier, I'm kind of hoping to do media work for the 80th anniversary. Yes, so that's that. Do I speak French? I speak French pretty badly. I mean, I get by. I understand French better than I speak it. I can read French, but my grammar is terrible, as most Brits are here. And my issue is I'm just doing this all the time, speaking English. I'm not. If you become a plumber here and you're completely having to speak French every day all the way through, you're using it and practicing it a lot. I'm not. I go days on end when I don't speak any French. If I do it, it's going to the shop and saying merci beaucoup, par carte, paying by card, s'il vous plaît, that kind of stuff. So it should be. I wish my French was better. Which of the myth-busting shows has been the standout? Standout in terms of I'm finding out how many people still believe FDR knew about Pearl Harbor. That one was the standout in that I had no idea how deeply set that myth show is. I did like Tom's French 1941 from a few days ago. That was really good. I like them all. I like them all really. It's like picking a favorite child. And some of the ones I liked weren't as popular with viewers. I like the one with Dwayne Epstein about the Dirty Dozen because I'm a movie fan. I like that one. I liked all of them really. So I'll keep on scrolling down. Here's a good one from Rob Crane. What's your impression of the Normandy population's feelings about D-Day 80? Lots of financial benefits, lots of hassle. Yeah, well, this is a big, massive, great can of worms. And I was having dinner or lunch the other day with Helen Patton, General Patton's granddaughter is a great friend of mine, and she's been coming to Normandy for every anniversary, like I have, for years and years, and seen the changes. And we're in this era where we're confronting, but not confronting it, the fact we're transitioning from the era of veterans being around to not being around. And it's going to become different. The 90th will be very different, the 80th, for example. And it's becoming more commercial. But weirdly, as it becomes more commercial in certain places, those places are very happy for tourism because they've all moved in to take advantage. That's maybe not the right word, but to be part of the tourism process. So Sainte-Mère-Église, for example, like Aramanche, are probably the busiest places. But everyone who lives around the square in Sainte-Mère-Église pretty much now is making money from D-Day, running cafes, museums, art print shops, same in Aramanche. So if you live in Aramanche now, if you choose to buy an apartment in Aramanche, then it's well fool you if you don't understand the fact that from March till September, there's going to be tourist buses coming through your town day in, day out. So that aspect has sorted itself out in a sense by the fact that there are very few people living in those places that just don't understand it. Further afield, one of the things that Mag talks about a lot, because Mag's family is from the area behind Utah Beach, is that Crisbeck Battery, for example, does like a nighttime show around June. I think they do it every night for a few nights where they have like explosions playing. I mean, I think they even have fireworks and pyrotechnics, things like that. Now, for the people who visit that, a lot of them probably find that incredibly stimulating and exciting to see this. But Crisbeck, that area around Sainte-Marcouf, that was the village where the most civilians were killed in the D-Day bombardments in La Manche, so in that department. And there are still some elderly people there. Mag knows one person elderly person, I think they were a child at the time, who kind of has to leave their village for a few days because they cannot stand the sound, this simulated gunfire explosions, because they remember the real explosions of D-Day. So as you said in your question, Rob, it's a mixed bag. Some people find it kind of overwhelming. It brings up dark memories. Some people it's a bit of everything. I mean, I find it a struggle myself at times, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Imagine a church, right? And in that church, there is a wedding taking place, and there's a funeral taking place sometime later, and then in the community center outside, there's a party for Bob's 40th birthday, okay? All of those things are normal. Weddings taking place are normal. Birthday parties in the civic center are normal. And funerals are normal. Well, normally around the anniversaries has all those types of things going on in the same space at the same time. So in Sainte-Mère-Église or Pegasus Bridge, for example, on June 5th, 6th, 7th, you can have family members there literally retracing where their loved ones were killed or wounded on June the 6th with their families, while there's marching bands going up and down playing, the Great Escape theme tune and stuff, and people having parties and drinking. It's all fine, but it's happening in the same space. And it's the tonal shift that I struggle with sometimes, where you've got to switch immediately from remembrance to party, and all of that it's the same thing applies. I'm going off on a tangent now about the wording used by the various regional tourism boards about how they describe things in Normandy, because they commemoration, remembrance, like there are in Bayeux, just around the corner from where I live, there's a D-Day ball, like an outdoor 1940s nights. They have like a Glenn Miller-esque band on stage, and people are in there jitterbugging and wearing 40s hat. That's fine. The liberation is worth celebrating, but there's a Commonwealth Cemetery like 300 yards away. Again, I have no problem with these things happening, but it's the tonal shift, and so everyone has to decide whether or not the terminology is right. So this event at Crisbeck, for example, is that a commemorative event? Is it a remembrance event? Is it a spectacle? Is it like a tattoo? So that's where we are with Normandy now. All of these things are happening in the same space. So you just have to accept the fact that that's it. It's this tonal shift thing. It's like I said, the analogy being there's a funeral, a wedding, and a party happening in a church at the same moment, because that's kind of what goes on here. So that's my kind of feeling about the anniversaries. I love them and I hate them at the same time. How did the bombings at Normandy miss the targets, which cost so many lives? Well, it's a massive, great process. We're talking about the transportation plan. So the bombing of France begins, March and April and leads right up to June the 6th, and indeed continues afterwards. And during that period, something like 30,000 French died across the various areas that were being targeted by the Allies. And this includes the railway yards, the marshalling yards, and includes, as you're probably referring to, the bombing on June the 6th itself, that the heavy bombers coming along and trying to take out the targets. Well, it's a massive, great subject that really deserves a proper full-on show. But I would say the simplest way to understand it is most of the strategic bombers being used on D-Day are doing a job that they don't do normally, in that the heavy 4-engine Lancaster bombers that are trying to hit targets just inland from Sword Beach, for example. Well, normally they're bombing Germany. They're bombing big targets. They're bombing huge factory areas of cities at high altitude, where they're doing kind of, what we would maybe call carpet bombing. Whereas on D-Day, they're required to do something much more precision. They're meant to be taking out individual, gun batteries. And it's kind of not what they're supposed to do. The same with the 8th Air Force hitting Omaha. An 8th Air Force veteran told me years ago, he said, the 8th Air Force did fail on Omaha Beach and did miss most of its targets. And he was in a B-17, I think, on that day. And he said, but he thought of it as like standing at the top of the Empire State Building and dropping a penny off the top of the building and trying to get it into a milk bottle at the bottom. That's how he described trying to hit, individual bunkers behind a beach at the altitude they were doing, at the speed they were flying on the morning of D-Day. So, and this is the arguments you get if you read James Holland's 44 book. They're in there. He's all, and Steve Bourquet's book about the D-Day bombing. All these decisions between Pete Quesada and Doolittle and all these others about what their expectations for the bombing were happening, and people were arguing pretty much up to like the minute the aircraft were taking off. They were still discussing whether or not it was going to work and whether or not it was the right thing to do. So, what I will say to end that answer is that the bombing on D-Day is a subject that requires a lot more study and a lot more investigation and a lot more analysis and understanding and balance with the fact that, as you say there, so many French people lost their lives as part of this, and whether or not the bombing should have been done differently. And I mean, prior to June the 6th, I think the Allies had taken out all the bridges over the Seine River and all bar one over the Loire River or something. This is all to prevent German reinforcements coming. But what usually happens is the Germans had those bridges repaired within 3 or 4 days. So by the time the units that are moving to Normandy get to those bridges in those towns, even though they've been knocked out successfully in the transportation plan, they've been patched up again by the time the Germans come to need them. So therefore, could they not have been not bombed at all? That's the question. But too much to talk about there. Sean Brennan, we love logistics and war economies. Does anyone know someone expert on Lend-Lease in China? I want to do more stuff about China, and I want to do more stuff about Lend-Lease in China, and I want to do more about the Chinese allied relationships, because it's kind of a new field in World War II history. John McManus has done some work, and those of you who watched the Sino-Japanese week on World War II TV last year, we began to tackle that subject. But the Chinese front is the big untapped front, and not just China, but also the Russians moving into Manchuria in 1945 that kind of nudges the Japanese again towards surrender. That's an underexplored, underappreciated avenue. So lots of work to do there. But I am very grateful to you guys for embracing some of those shows on the economy and logistics, because they're not as sexy as shows about P-51 Mustangs and Operation Market Garden, but you guys seem to appreciate them, which is good. So that's good. Marks out of 10 from Ian Carr for the various Allied tanks post D-Day. Well, who cares? As long as the Churchill gets 10, which it does, that's it. The Churchill gets 10, That's it. No, don't need to know anything else. The Churchill tank gets 10 out of 10. I maintain the Churchill tank is the closest Allied tank to doing the job it's required to do as well as it possibly can. And that's not to say the Sherman isn't also a good tank and that other tanks that we used were also capable and good, but I think the Churchill is the closest we have to near perfection. You can all insult me with your debates about whether or not that's true. So there we are. Someone's doing the camouflage joke. I didn't see you at camouflage training yesterday, Perkins. Well, thank you very much. It's an old joke, but it still makes me laugh. Monty Python, How Not to Be Seen. Andrew Wood, which unit of World War II do you feel gets no coverage at all? Well, there's lots. You could argue the Chinese again. Lots of the Chinese units are not getting enough credit. I think probably the poor bloody infantry, the PBI. That there are certain infantry units that are written about. But there's too much obsession, I'm sorry, folks, with the 101st Airborne and even the British 1st Airborne at Arnhem, paratroopers, rangers, commandos. And yeah, I'm part of this. I'm doing shows on rangers and commandos and paratroopers every now and then. The PBI, boots on the ground, are doing not necessarily the most vital work of World War II. You could say that hitting German industry is more important, but a place is not liberated until someone's walked across it. The same kind of applies in modern wars. It doesn't matter how many billion-dollar drones you've got flying in here. Some poor son of a bitch with a rucksack on and a rifle has to walk through that village and take it from an enemy. Now, it may have been hit by artillery first. It may have been pasted by our air power. There may be Navy in it, but some poor guy, that really hasn't changed. So I think the poor bloody infantry still need a lot more. And I could go into a whole diatribe about people's obsession with the 101st Airborne. I'm members of various Facebook pages and people are proudly taking photos of all their Easy Company books. And I loved the Easy Company veterans I knew very well. Bill Garnier was a legend. They were friends of mine. I did Band of Brothers tours for a number of years. I'll be doing Band of Brothers tours again. But, how many people just stick in that bubble of being obsessed by E Company and never go outside of that? They never even look at the other units in the 101st, let alone branch out from Airborne at all. So, I'm being a bit grumpy now. But there are amazing characters in the, again, Peter Hart's book. That book is better than Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose. It's better than lots of other. If you want to hear about characters at war and what they went through, it's an outstanding book. But we don't talk about the 16th Battalion DLI. We don't talk about the 9th DLI, the Gateshead Gurkhas, my friend Colin's favorite. We don't talk about the 2nd Battalion Essex, the Pompadours fighting their way through France, Belgium, and Netherlands. It's just not sexy enough. So there we are. So let's go. Let's find some more questions. Just talk about yourself. So I'm trying to find some questions. Here's one. I don't know what I've just seen the cues. I'll read it after. What were Allied leadership thinking about trying to mount an offensive in the Hurtgen Forest, a place with no roads, no visibility for air or artillery support, smack into West Wall defenses? Well, yes, basically. What were they thinking? I think, and if Phil Blood was watching, he would talk about the various gaps there that had been used going back to the sort of 19th century. That maybe they're thinking bigger picture. They're thinking about these gaps through the kind of forest there, kind of around Aachen, and they're thinking long-term goal rather than the short-term goal of actually getting through the Hurtgen itself. But yeah, the Hurtgen is probably a campaign that shouldn't have taken place. Although you kind of have to offer as a counter, what would you do with the units that were put there? Where else would you deploy them? And I don't know that I have an answer to that. Where do you push more for the Ruhr? Do we do something? I don't know. I don't know what, that by that point, by October, November 1944, there are a shitload of Allied divisions in the ETO. You've got to do something with them. So I'm kind of at the point where I'd say probably don't put them to Hergen, but I don't know that I've got a viable suggestion what to do with them instead. You can't really fit any more in Italy. I mean, it would have been nice to have got across the Gothic line up into the north and into Austria earlier, but how do you fit more units in Italy? It's too skinny. So that doesn't work. Is there another route through France, the Vosges? I don't know. I've confused myself now. Give myself too much to think about. To have a lie down later. As you say there, Brad, there's always another ridge line in Italy. So I realize I'm way behind with the questions, and I'll go back and try and find some more. So again, thanks if you're just joining us for this. This is because the show about the Hergen has had to be postponed. So I will get to that as soon as I can. Trying to go down, actually find some questions. Yep, just talking about yourselves. Here's one. As an Englishman, do you know the history behind the roundabout? I'm assuming you're saying roundabout as in traffic circle, as in means of turning troops around. Yeah, not roundabout as in carousel. I love roundabouts, but I do have a story that I think I've told this before, but I'll tell it again. So I was doing a tour a few years ago with an American veteran and his family, Captain or Major Paul Hainault, I think his name was. And he was an engineer unit that came ashore on Omaha Beach, and he was put with his engineer. They built a Bailey bridge across the river in Formigny, which is about 7 or 8 miles inland from Omaha Beach, and then they pushed on towards Cerisy-le-Forêt and Ballois, so on the great general First Army push towards Saint-Lô. And there was a big traffic intersection, crossroads in the middle of the Cerisy Forest that was causing all sorts of snarl-ups for traffic. There were wounded coming back from the front towards Saint-Lô, the 29th Division, 2nd Division getting caught up there. There were provisions, supplies coming forward from the beaches, and because they're kind of forest logging roads, it's muddy and stuff like that, and traffic and mud when it was wet, dust when it was sunny. Anyway, Paul was this American engineer officer was tasked with improving the traffic flow in this particular environment. So he'd been given, acquired, bought, private purchase, whatever, a whole set of US Army engineering manuals, some of which were like decades old. He had them in his footlocker or something, and he brought them out the front. Anyway, in one of them was one that was talking about a traffic solution in the American Civil War. So this is 80 years earlier, and in this, and I think it was the Army of Potomac, but there was a particular problem where they were having problems with traffic, wagons going forward, wagons coming back, blah blah blah, and someone devised a circular system where they kind of made a big space and they basically put a roundabout in. And he saw this in an American manual, and he had a roundabout traffic circle built in Cerisy-le-Forêt near Ballois, and it's still there. 7 roads lead to it. And according to him, and I've not checked the facts out, it was the first roundabout in Europe that is, designed. There are other places like Champs-Élysées in Paris where you have like a circular road running around something with other things that kind of work or became to be used like a roundabout. But according to Paul, this was the first purpose-built traffic management solution roundabout in Europe, and then the Europeans that went for them, and then eventually went back to the USA. So the moral of this story is that they were an American invention originally. So yeah, there's a side story for you there. History Explorer. Hi, Rob. Hope you didn't get offended by my comment about artillery not having changed in several hundred years, but half of you did. My favorite time of year in Normandy, different now than what it used to be, because when I was guiding, I liked the winter because I wasn't working, although I'd also wished I was working, that kind of thing. When you're working hard, you wish you were off, and then when you're off, you kind of wish you were working. So I used to the winter was my time for traveling and catching up on reading. But of course, now I'm doing this sort of all year round. Seasons mean a bit less to me because I spend an awful lot of time sitting in this chair talking to you guys. It would be really cynical of me, but slightly true, to say I do kind of like it when there are less tourists in Bayeux. Colin and I and Mag and various other Romain who joins us, we all live in Bayeux, and You know, in the summer it is wall to wall Americans, Brits and Dutch. All one. Mag calls it the dance of the Americans at 6:30. All walking around trying to find a restaurant because there aren't enough restaurant places in Bayeux for the number of people that stay in Bayeux in the summer. So they're all trying to, you know, the groups of 6 all trying to find a table. And so the dance of the Americans. And I was even walking to Colin's on Christmas Day because Colin invited me for Christmas lunch at his. Thank you, Colin. Because Mag was off in Grenoble with her 2 girls on Christmas. And as I was walking to Colin's on Christmas Day, I was just going past the cathedral in Bayeux when Mass had finished. And I heard 2 different separate groups of tourists. They were American, but they could have been from anywhere. But I heard them because they were speaking English. And both of them were saying they'd been to Mass on Christmas Day. Oh, it's a pity it wasn't in English for us. And you're going, really? You're expecting the French to do their Mass on Christmas Day in English for you? Some of it's in Latin. Anyway, whatever. That sometimes we sigh a bit at the tourists, and tourists can, you know, whether they're British, American, Canadian, tourists are tourists, and you know, you're just trying to go out and have a quick pint, and there's tourists everywhere, all kind of being tourists. And then when I go away, I become one of them myself. I become a tourist, annoying the locals by wandering around looking for restaurants and doing all the stuff. So, but tourists pay our bills. Tourists are important. So there we are. So there we are. That's that question there. There's no more. I think am I up to date with comments? Yeah, it looks like I'm up to date. Trash talking Rommel. That's interesting. So John, you don't think Rommel deserves trash talking? Is that what you're saying there, or are you being sarcastic? I maintain, and before I even had Phil Blood on to talk about Rommel, I still maintain that Rommel is massively overrated as a general. And this is this whole idea about greatness. And in the various comments on the myth shows, we talked about Zhukov, we talked about Rommel, we talked about greatness. To me, is a very select term for the very best. And I used on another show about football analogy. I've seen many good footballers for Ipswich, but only a handful that I would call greats. And in terms of true footballing greats, I've seen live in my team. I saw Bergkamp play. I didn't ever see Cruyff play. I was too. I just missed Beckenbauer, who passed away this week. No, I saw George Best play. Very few actually earn the title the greatest. So when you're coming to generals, I definitely don't think. No, Joe Pigott was not an Ipswich great Rob. Yeah, he was the striker. We had him a couple of years and not terribly good. So yeah, Rommel at times was good. I don't think Rommel comes anywhere near the mantle of greatness. Manstein, maybe as a German, I don't know. Kesselring, I think, showed moments of brilliance, but does that necessarily make him great? I don't know. Great Allied generals, I would argue that Nimitz is a great admiral. I would say General William Slim is a great ground, army general, but Rokossovsky possibly for the Soviets. But I don't think we should be having more than 4 or 5 names we can hurl the name great at. And as William Nance came on earlier this week and talked about Simpson of the Ninth Army, clearly very good at what he did. I don't think great necessarily applies to him. Very, very competent and good, but great. That's just my interpretation of the word great. Maybe you have a lower threshold. I remember the Eddie Izzard sketch. Eddie Izzard was talking about the overuse of the word awesome in the English language, because awesome is a biblical word, and awesome is meant to be like Moses parting the sea. That's awesome is like, planets spontaneously disappearing. That's awesome is like a biblical expression of, oh my God, that's it. If I could, summon lightning and thunder out of my hands, that would be awesome. But now we use awesome. That was an awesome burger. Awesome shouldn't really be. That was a good burger. What do you mean? It was a very good burger. Maybe it was a great burger, but can a burger be awesome? But then I say books are awesome. So there we are. Awesome. I don't know. It's language. Any progress with Joanna Lumley and the Gurkhas? No, I have contacted Joanna Lumley's agent and asked to be a guest to talk about the Gurkhas, and no, no progress so far. This is an interesting one and quite topical. Will I be doing any more Holocaust shows? Maybe, but maybe not. And I'll give you 2 reasons. The first is they don't do very well. Not that that's any reason not to do them, because tackling important subjects is why we're here. It's just, I don't want to go into a big rant about YouTube because they'll hear me, but it's getting increasingly hard to put graphic content on and shocking content. And I know history creators who are leaving YouTube, those who are just avoiding the Holocaust at all. It's stupid that we're worried as creators about putting content out there about one of mankind's most tragic humanitarian disasters, human caused by the fanatical evil ideology that was the Third Reich and the Nazis. But tackling it as a subject has become problematic. So I will be doing less Holocaust content as I go forward because of the issues that I'm having and all of us are having with YouTube. If I end up not doing any more Holocaust content, at least I've got a body of Holocaust content on my channel. There are some World War II channels who have not tackled it at all, naming no names, and that's fine. So it's complicated. And I was talking to Brad the other day, and he's asked me anything. We will have to find solutions to how history can be shared and what we can do in terms of graphic imagery. And the show with Doug Nash, for example, that was 2.5 hours long, not monetized. I won't earn any revenue from that because it had some graphic images in it. So that one, you can watch it all you want. You're not helping Woody's bank balance with that one. Or limited monetization, I should say. It's not demonetized, it's limited monetization. I'm making less. There's no advertising revenue. And I understand advertisers, you don't want to have a show about the Holocaust that's interrupted by someone trying to sell you. What was it? Brad was being sold something. Oh, it was cannabis. It was medicinal cannabis. He got an advert for when he was watching one of my shows. So, so this is because we're at the beginning still of using a platform like YouTube for sharing history. I mean, it's not really the beginning. We've been doing it for years here, but it's still, rules haven't been set up yet. We're still working out how to deal with it in society. Like we're still working out how to deal with lots of things like the pressure of social media on teenagers and things like that. There are certain things in society we're kind of starting to get a grip on, like, I don't know, teen pregnancies or something like that. We've kind of been looking at that for 20, 30 years, getting a grip on it. But, cyberbullying is, it's still something we're learning from. And I think how to put history content onto a platform like this is something we're still working at. So there we are. So yes, I would like to do some more Holocaust content, but don't be waiting with bated breath for anything in immediate future, because no. If I could, I'm guessing this means if I could produce a World War II film or something would be my subject, Jeff. I'm always asked that. What would be the mini series I could do? I think again it would be British infantry. Either do like a Pacific type thing and follow 2 or 3 different British infantry units. One that went through North Africa to Italy or Sicily. One that did BEF in 1940 in Normandy. And one that did, British infantry out in Burma or something, and do 10 parts or ideally 3 separate 10-part series all about those infantry, but definitely PBI, definitely infantry, definitely British, because I'm British. Doesn't mean I wouldn't like to see a Canadian series as well, and American, but as a Brit, we are underrepresented in terms of war films in the last 20 or 30 years. The ones that do come out, like the Operation Mincemeat one, tend to be about spies and deception and that kind of thing. We don't make the big grand scale kind of Bridge Too Far, going back to those movies in the 60s like Play Dirty with Michael Caine or Sea of Sand. We don't do that kind of stuff anymore. So what else have we got there? Rob Crane is still talking about Joe Pigott, the former Ipswich striker. I don't know where he's gone, Joe Pigott, now, but I think he's wrong. He was the wrong style of play for Ipswich, if we're going into that. But for those of you who don't understand that I support Ipswich, sorry. But yeah, going back to Rommel, I think he's overrated. Clark, I think, is Mark Clark. There's lots of comments on the sidebar about Mark Clark being not very good, and James Holland, in his writing process, changed his mind about Clark. He went into writing his books about Italy thinking Mark Clark was not particularly good, and came out of the other end of the research thinking he was actually pretty good. So it's interesting. It's one person's view. Other historians will have different views, but it's interesting that even those of us who have been studying this, I'm not comparing myself to James Holland, we're still able to do a 180 on our opinions. Things will come up and you'll reevaluate, and certain people will just always be held in the position they're held by the people who are fans of them and hate them. There's a particular couple of people who are always arguing in my comments, politely. Lyndon's one of them. Lyndon, hi Lyndon, if you're watching. And it's about Montgomery and Market Garden. And there's just completely two different sets of schools of thought about this. One, that Monty was fine and it was not his fault, it was Brereton. And others, Montgomery sent everybody on a disastrous operation. And there's no meeting. The people have their views. There's neither of the sides will budge. And I won't budge on certain things. So certain people are just beyond opinion changing. I think if you like Patton, you'll always like Patton, and if you dislike Montgomery, you'll always dislike Montgomery. And same with MacArthur. MacArthur, if someone hates MacArthur, you're not going to change his mind or her mind. But other people, the lesser tier of people, like Mark Clark, I don't think Mark Clark is quite on the same top level celebrity generals of World War II. He's one notch down from Patton, Montgomery. Slim probably should be on the top rank, but probably is one rank down for most people. I think a lot of people around the world won't have heard of Slim. A lot of Americans won't necessarily have heard of Bill Slim and the 14th Army for no reason. But just there we go. So I'll go down a few more questions. Appreciation or otherwise of Miles Dempsey. Well, this is interesting, Ian, because he came up in the sidebar on the discussion with William Nance about Simpson, the Ninth Army. Although we were talking about the American Army, Dempsey, you could draw a parallel to him being quite similar to Simpson in that not courting publicity, not the kind of guy who wants to be there in the front of the newspapers with different types of hats on and being seen there, but steady, getting the job done, scores 6 or 7 out of 10 on everything. Horrocks also came up. I think Horrocks being a corps commander is a level down. Horrocks has peaks and troughs in his command and suffering from various physical injuries and I think mental issues, Horrocks. But yeah, Dempsey I think is certainly under analyzed, underappreciated. I don't think he was a standout, but I think he was good. I think he was, again, we're back to that good or great. And I think coming through the war being good is fine, making the rank of great is for a few people, and I wouldn't say that Horrocks was great anymore. Dempsey was great but good. I would agree with that. Eisenhower wasn't a military leader; he was a politician. Ian. He was a military leader. I mean, that's kind of what he stood on his door in a sense. He was commanding SHAEF and Operation Overlord, so he was the leader of military. But what you're saying is his reason for being there wasn't so much that. Eisenhower is part politician, part diplomat, but also very good at controlling in a way without making it seem like you're being controlled. That's what I think is Eisenhower's one of his greatest strengths, is that he would get people doing what he wanted without having to shout at them or reprimand them. It was all kind of by power of personality and people who had been he was junior to early in the war, who he is now senior to. He's able to keep them in line. So Eisenhower was good at that. And I don't know any historian who doesn't have good things to say about Eisenhower. There must be one. There must be someone out there who goes, no, Eisenhower was terrible. Oh, well, they're the people that, who believe the conspiracy about Eisenhower allowing whatever it is it's always different in different versions of this meme that goes around. 10 million Germans died in Eisenhower's concentration camps in the war. So those people don't like Eisenhower, but they're the same ones who think that FDR knew about Pearl Harbor and that Patton was assassinated. And that's when I'm arguing with people, when I'm replying to people's comments saying that that FDR knew about Pearl Harbor or these other conspiracy theories. I know I'm not going to win the debate when they bring up other ones. When they say, and we knew about the Americans knew about 9/11 as well. Oh, and Patton was assassinated. You just know they've just bought into every conspiracy theory going. It tends to be, if you like, if you believe one conspiracy theory, you tend to kind of they fall like dominoes. You kind of. I think it's obviously to do with how our brains are wired. And I think it's amazing how many flat earthers would also be, in creationists or believing that, that aliens are abducting people. It seems to be you're in for them all or you're not in for them all. And I'm cynical. I like to kind of have my arms folded and go, well, show me the facts. I don't always just leap in and believe everything I'm told, but I kind of like to think I know how to do my research. And I always find Occam's razor serves me well as in life and in history. So if you don't know what Occam's razor is, look it up. So Occam's razor, Occam was whatever it was, 14th century Turkish philosopher or something. And people say, no, he was 13th century, he was Hungarian. I don't know. I'm saying 14th century Turkish, but he could be anywhere. So Occam's razor is basically this. Is if there are different possibilities for something, the most likely one is nearly always true. So the example would be Jim is late for work 10 minutes. Now the possibilities are his car wouldn't start, his alarm clock didn't work, didn't set off, or he couldn't find the butter in the fridge and had to go out and get an extra sandwich on the way to work. That's why he's 10 minutes late. They're all the obvious ones. Another possibility is he was abducted by aliens on the way and probed up in, somewhere behind Mars and brought back by the aliens 10 minutes later. That's a possibility for him being late, but it's an unlikely one. So to apply that to General Patton's death, for example, the most likely thing that happened to General Patton is the car accident put him to hospital and he died. His health suffered as a result of the car accident. Yes, there is the possibility that whatever it was, OSS, blah, 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 had him targeted and had him wiped out. But it's highly unlikely. So Occam's razor suggests that the most likely outcome is usually correct. And by the way, on the subject of Patton's death, let's go off on a real tangent now, rabbit hole. Let's say that someone did want Patton to be killed, right? In 1945. Someone wants him gone, okay? There's lots of really easier ways of bumping off Patton than the convoluted way of making sure there's a vehicle on a corner in a road, blah, 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 and just put mines in a road. Just, somebody just machine gun him, just blame it on, deserted Germans or whatever, or crackpots. Just there's lots of reasons why death could be inflicted still in 1945, even though the war is over. There's all sorts of displaced personnel. Just blame it on some renegade. There's just so many easier ways of killing Patton than the way they did. So again, it's just he died of a car accident. That's it. Anyway, so and then yes, the Doug Nash show was epic, and he went for dinner with his wife later, and he said he was absolutely spent after that 2.5 hours. He told me he was going to do an hour and a half, and he'd lost track of time during it, and was just on. So yeah, and people are discussing Patton in the sidebar, and Patton, he's everything. He's brilliant and terrible, egotistical and humble. The spirituality, Patton is really complex, and there's bits of Patton I admire and bits of Patton I don't. And I swing, and just when I think I've got a handle on him, I think he does. I read about something, I go, yeah, Carl, that's just changed it again. I've just swung back the other way. There's a good question, which there is no easy answer. AJK, why are so many people, especially collectors, so obsessed with the German army in World War II, and especially units like the SS? I don't know. Why do more people dress up as Darth Vader at the conventions than Luke Skywalker? Why are people drawn to the baddies? I don't know. I think there's something innate there about it, that there's a, you know, and I mean, you could say they have the best uniforms, which people say, which I don't know how you can describe a uniform that was worn by people who are murdering other people in death camps is the best uniform. Stylish. I mean, but I don't know. It is an ongoing problem. When I was collecting militaria back in my teens and 20s, back then it was the German stuff. It was the German stuff that was commanding me. I remember going to a shop in Valence Road, and Valence Road is the part of London where the Cray twins were from. So have you seen the Tom Hardy film? You know, the two twin brother gangsters. And this is a little tiny little shop run by this lovely old Jewish fella whose name I can't remember. And I'd buy a battle dress, 1940 pattern battle dress, size 13. He'd have to cut the string of the bales of these 20, I think it was 10 or 20 battle dress tunics per bale. And they were like, if you bought 5 or 6 battle dresses, they were 3 or 4 quid each or something. And now battle dress jackets unissued go for 100 quid. I don't know. I'm out of touch. Even American uniforms back then, were dirt cheap. You could buy M41 jackets, M43 jackets, really cheap. American cloth badges were dirt cheap then, and American helmets were dirt cheap. It's more expensive now, but the German stuff is also more. It's all going up, but the German stuff may be a little bit closer in price to American British stuff now than it was back then, but still leading the way in terms of prices, the German stuff. And look at the what JD does with Eric, the Gettysburg Museum of History, the collectible SS stuff. People love to see that stuff. People are fascinated by that, and it is how it is. I don't get it myself. I don't get it. I don't understand why people would want to collect German stuff. Although that doesn't mean that if you collect German stuff, you're a bad person. It just doesn't appeal to me. But I think there's something much deeper going on than just this, like people collecting World War II German stuff. It's this, as I said, it's this being drawn to the bad side, being drawn to the dark side. People like to be baddies. Halloween costumes. People like to be witches and warlocks and vampires. I don't know. Is there something about, again, being drawn to the dark side? I don't know. But yeah, that's where I don't know why. I don't know why, but it is. How do I rate the Great Escaper movie? I haven't seen it yet. It wasn't shown at French cinemas, so I haven't seen it. I ordered the Blu-ray. It's arriving like next week, so I will watch it then. I'm looking forward to it. I know they didn't film it in Normandy. I know from the previews I've seen, it doesn't look like Normandy. I don't care. I love Michael Jackson. Love Leonard Jackson. Michael Caine, Leonard Jackson. I saw Pierce Brosnan's bit of it being, well, I didn't see the filming of his movie, The Rifleman, but that was filmed in Normandy. I saw them closing down the filming. They were filming a bit near Bayeux Cathedral. I got there too late to see Pierce and ask him to be on World War II TV. But I have high hopes for it. So there you are. So next question. Thanks for the donations. That's very kind of you, Alex92. Salute. Keep up the good work. That's great. Have I done a show on the Red Bull Express? No, not yet. I know there's books about it, and it'd probably be worth doing. Although I would think that we're at the point now where there's something to be said about it different to what was always said about it. I don't know what I mean by that Red Bull. I mean, there was a movie in 1950. Sidney Poitier was in it. Jeff Chandler. So Red Bull Express had been the public consciousness for a long time. So we know it was lots of African Americans driving the trucks. I would like to wonder if anyone's done any work on the data, the figures. How much were they carrying? How much? We know the fact that these drivers are doing 23 hours and one way there and one way back and stuff. But like with the Mulberry Harbors, which I think were an essential part of the Normandy campaign, but you have to look at the fact that the Americans were unloading huge amounts of supplies on Utah Beach as well. I'd like to know if people have done work into what I'm asking is what percentage of stuff was being taken by truck to the front line, what was coming in by air, what was coming in by port rails. We don't we tend to overlook the fact that the Allies did get the railways working again in most of the places that they liberated, and railways were very important. Phil Blood probably heard that and has pricked up his ears. So I'd like to see someone analyze the percentages of what amount of supplies was taken by what method. Red Ball Express, important, clearly, obviously, but has it mean we've overlooked the railways? Has it overlooked the air stuff being brought in? I don't know. But no, I haven't done a show, but now it's going to write it on my list, and I'm going to try and find out someone to present on that. What more questions? Any chance of doing something on Norway 1940 from British perspective? Yes. Whether that will end up waiting till 2030 and the 90th anniversary, will that be the 90th anniversary? Yeah, I don't know. Or whether I'll do something again when I get to 2025, 2026. There's no anniversaries. Will I go back and look at some 94? I mean, this year, no, I don't think there'll be. I think this year I'm pretty much focusing on the 80th anniversary of 1944. Other things here and there, but not much coming up this year. There's so much 80th anniversary stuff that I want to cover. So no. Question: what is my favorite war film? Talvisota. Everyone's going, what the hell's that? Talvisota, the Finnish film The Winter War is the English title. Made 1990 or something. Make sure you get the long version, not the short version. It's kind of, well, when they advertised it to the American British audience, they called it the Finnish Saving Private Ryan, meaning kind of it was a definitive statement of that generation. But it's about 1940, 39-40, following a kind of group of Finnish, I think they're territorials, National Guard equivalents, who then have to defend against the bloody great Soviet invasion. So Talvisota is my favorite. I do have a huge soft spot for The Great Escape, even though it's a little bit cheesy in places, but I love The Great Escape. Bridge Too Far, kind of diminishing returns as it gets older. Saving Private Ryan, as I get older, is getting a bit diminishing returns. I love 36 Hours, James Garner, one of my favorites. Sea of Sand, British LRDG, I like a lot as a film. And you know, I've said it before, The Wild Geese, 1978, Mercenaries into Africa. It's not, Richard Burton, Roger Moore, Richard Harris. Please, Yahoo, little Emile, little boy there. Love The Wild Geese. Guilty pleasure. So there we are. I'll do a couple more questions, and I'll bring things down and do some work. Episode on Ipswich Town during World War II. Well, you see now, I did try and find out if there was enough mileage in players who'd played for Ipswich Town who went to the war. Because Alex Churchill did a book about the Chelsea players who went to the Great War. And I couldn't find any. It's anything cool. I'm sure there were some. I contacted the club and said, have you got a history department? And nothing came back. And I just thought it'd be really cool to find out if there was an Ipswich Town pre-war player who'd got the military cross in Salerno or something. Now Celtic, Colin's team, that'd be interesting. You might have to broaden out to Glasgow, but Colin would hate that. But I'm sure Celtic had some real heroes, First and Second World War. So that'd be a bigger club, bigger fan base, more players. Not more players, still have 11 on the team, but just a bigger. But yeah, I'd love to do something about Ipswich and World War II. I have got a book about the school I went to, Colchester Royal Grammar School. Bertrand Ramsay was an old boy. He only did, I think, one year there, so he wasn't there for the top, but he was in Colchester. And I've got a book about the Royal Grammar School guys who died in World War II, and it's quite a big book. And the author of that book was actually a teacher of mine when I was there, obviously. And I was going to say his name, but I can only remember his nickname, and I probably can't say that. Stephen something or other, but I'm now laughing because I know what we all called him. But I can't use that now. I have thought about contacting him and asking him to come on, but it's a bit niche. It's a bit niche just talking about the school I went to. And actually, I don't really have very fond memories of my school because I was a bit common and they were a bit posh and stuff. But I did buy that book because it turned up somewhere and I bought it and it was cheap and I bought it and it was quite interesting. Do we know anything about German spying for the Battle of France in the Low Countries? I don't know anything about it. I'm sure there was. And not just Germany, of course, you've got the whole Alsace French-German thing. I'm sure there's all sorts of mixed loyalties, shall we say, in 1939-40 for people. Interesting to look at. Yeah. Yeah, press the like button. And by the way, if you're watching this and you're not yet a subscriber, press subscribe. It's interesting. About 60% of people who watch this channel are not subscribed, which is fine. It's your prerogative. However, any YouTuber creator will tell you the more people that are subscribed, the more you simply help more other people find my channel. So I don't know why you've not subscribed. The 60% of you who haven't subscribed. It doesn't cost you anything. I mean, I'm not talking about becoming a patron. I'm talking about subscribing. And you don't have to have notifications on. My advice would be to subscribe and have notifications on so you get information about the shows that are coming up. You don't have to have notifications on, but if you subscribe, you're helping me. You're helping me because it shows that people are being drawn to my channel. So between 60 and 65% of the people who watch me on anything are not subscribed. So please subscribe. And then when you watch, like, and then when you watch and have finished watching, leave a comment. Even if it just says cheers or thanks or good one, it helps out. It's all interaction. So, you know, just spend a few seconds in of it. Well, here's a good one. What is your opinion on Stephen Ambrose? So, did you want first? Do you want bad first? Good second? Good second? Let's do bad first. He plagiarized himself, which took some doing. If you take Band of Brothers, The Victors, Citizen Soldiers, and D-Day, there are whole chunks that kind of got repeated from book to book, and you know, he said some absurd things, not just in the writing, but I remember he was on one of the anniversaries, like 50th anniversary of D-Day or something, or 50th anniversary of whatever it was, and someone said to him, "Why did the Americans succeed in World War II?" And he said, and I can't do a Stephen Ambrose voice, he said something like, "Because they knew they were fighting for a democracy." It's hard. If you're fighting for democracy, that's how you'll win. I remember watching that thinking, well, how did the Soviets win then? Just that statement falls at the first hurdle. I mean, it doesn't, you know, you fight. Does that statement bear any scrutiny? You know, you fire the starting gun, it collapses on the starting blocks there. There's lots of reasons why people fight for each other, for community. Yes, and some do fight for democracy. But yeah, that's the kind of thing Stephen Ambrose said. And yeah, he if he hadn't died when he did, I think he'd have got a few more cases of people saying you're takers. And I'm trying to do a story without kind of naming anybody. In the writing of Band of Brothers, one of the officers of 3rd Platoon was helping Stephen Ambrose with the writing process because this particular guy had served on for his country for sort of 40 years, retired a colonel. And Stephen Ambrose in the first draft had a story about this officer in the Ardennes that the officer called up Ambrose and said, "It's not true." He said, "Ah, well, I've heard it's true." He said, "Well, it's not true. And I'll get the other 3 people on this patrol to tell you that it wasn't true because they'll give you their sides of it." And the other 3 people whose names you would know if I said them. And Ambrose got the corrections from the 4 people that were written about this particular incident and said, "Okay, I'll change it then." And then the next draft came through a few weeks later, and the story was still in there, unchanged. And this officer called up Ambrose and said, "But you left the story in there. I told you it wasn't true. And the 3 people who were with me there, they all said it wasn't true, but you left it in." And Ambrose said something on the lines of, yeah, but you know nothing about writing books. You know, you've got to have these moments of drama. And I think that's it with Ambrose. I think in his heart, he wanted to be a Frederick Forsyth. He wanted to be Jack Higgins. He wanted to write thrillers. He wanted to control the outcome of his own writing. So the story of the landing craft coxswain being brought in at gunpoint to Omaha Beach that was in D-Day and has been repeated many times in articles. The flotilla commander, Jimmy Green, so I can use names this time, said it wasn't true because he knew the commanders on the boat, the coxswains on the boat. The first sergeant in the American 1st Division who was in the boat that Ambrose alleged the coxswain had refused to go in, and the American, the senior American, had to put a pistol on him to go in. He said, I was a senior American on his boat. I didn't have to pull my gun on anybody. So it clearly wasn't true. And Ambrose put it in, and it kept in all the editions. So, yeah. Now, that's the bad side of Ambrose. The good side is I simply wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now without Ambrose. Ambrose was the Beatles in terms of getting people to read about history back when he was writing. He got people to invest in their leather-bound Eastman volumes of his books who didn't normally read history. People who would normally watch sports or go to rodeos, or I'm talking about America. He got history into every American household and then helped spread it around the world as well. So his books sold millions, and he wrote really well. I say that through gritted teeth. He was a really good writer. He gripped you. And you want to know what happened next. And so that's why his books did well. They were very good. But I don't think he's a good historian. And it's interesting that he doesn't really get taught now at university. He's fallen from grace. I mean, he's dead. So so there you are. As you say there, Stuart Burbridge, 600-page book about D-Day, 80 pages about gold, judo, and sword, and a sick there one. That's it. But then Rick Atkinson does the same thing. But then Rick Atkinson said he was doing it. Rick Atkinson told the World War II story through the eyes of the American experience. So he didn't kind of pretend he was doing otherwise. But so Ambrose pushed on the appreciation of history a massive, great, push. And I don't think anybody's come close to the worldwide fame he had. Maybe you could say James Holland. Maybe you could say, Simon Sharma in Britain. Maybe, I don't know. Rick Atkinson. Maybe, I don't know. Richard Frank. But no, I don't. I think all of them come up a bit short compared to Stephen Ambrose. There was that era when I first moved here when every American between the age of 30 and 60 had read Stephen Ambrose. Not so much now. Now, thoughts on David Irving. Yeah, that David Irving has done more harm for the understanding of history because of his ridiculous, unfounded, nonsensical, proven wrong in court stuff about the Holocaust and the Nazis. And I think he started off kind of investigating some stuff and just went down this conspiracy theory part, and the fact he's now speaking, allegedly at kind of, covert meetings of far right idiots. David Irving, don't get me started. Terrible. Not has lost the right to be called a historian, I think, by his politics and his frankly insanely wrong views. I just saw the one about Joe Belkowski. I had exchanging emails with Joe a couple of days ago. In fact, Joe Belkowski is great historian. Omaha Beach is the Bible of Omaha Beach studies. Utah Beach, which isn't his specialist area, is a fantastic book on Utah Beach. You have those two books there. That's it. You can just stop with them. There's enough in there to satisfy anybody's need to understand how the Americans did what they did on June the 6th, and indeed a bit beyond. If you read Beyond the Beachhead, I mean, it doesn't mean you shouldn't get other books as well, but those two books alone, it should be in everybody's libraries. They're essential, and a really nice guy. Because he puts lots of sources in, because he puts lots of how he drew his data, they are maybe not quite as easy to read as a James Holland or Stephen Ambrose, in the sense that he's not trying to write a thriller. He's trying to convey facts. So I think that's why they probably aren't the best sellers, but they're brilliant. I mean, he's a great guy, and his books are brilliant, but maybe not as didn't get the success. Which Holocaust sites I see in Austria? I didn't see any Holocaust sites in Austria. I went to Vienna. Went to one day to Austria. We saw obviously all sorts of little markers about people being deported and things like that, and in the Czech Republic and Slovakia we saw bits and pieces reference. I've never been to a proper big Holocaust. I've not been to Auschwitz, not been to Bergen-Belsen, not been to Dachau. It's on my list. Obviously, I would like to go at some point. I just haven't got around to it. I will bring things in. I said I'll do an hour. It's an hour and 20 minutes. I'll do 1 or 2 more. What is an historian? There's a good one, Trevor. There's all sorts of different dictionary definitions of what is a historian. One, of course, is a qualified. Someone like Brad watching, with a PhD, he is a definition of historian. That some people say that's the only definition of historian. I think, because I have no qualifications, that the minute you cross to a point where other people are taking your work seriously, so your peers are saying, oh, that person's there, says this about this, that's interesting and worth repeating and sharing, at that point, you've crossed the bridge to becoming a historian. So people who have an amateur website about a particular unit, like Trevor, you're a historian, and maybe you have got a degree in history that I just never spoken to you about, but because you are going out there doing work and sharing it, and people are listening to what you're saying and learning from it, you're a historian. Now, the next question is, are people a good or a bad historian? That you can be a historian, but be a crap one. But you can be a historian and be a good one. David Irving, I know I said he isn't a historian, but he's a crap historian because he's gone down this conspiracy path and trying to deny the Holocaust. And he was saying, I'm not really denying it. I'm just saying the figures don't add up. Yeah, whatever. He's denying the Holocaust, and it was proven in court. He was a denier. So you're a historian the minute people start listening to what you're saying and taking you seriously. But that's not everybody's definition of a historian. I've been told by a couple of people who hate me that I'm not a historian, I'm a fraud, I'm a this, and I get those kind of things all the time. Not all the time, but every now and then. Anthony Beevor is a historian. I'm not a fan of Anthony Beevor's writing. That doesn't mean he's not a historian. He's not my cup of tea, although nothing's my cup of tea because I don't like tea. I just don't like his writing. That said, I did appreciate Stalingrad when I read it the first time, 20, 30 years ago. But his D-Day book is not very good. His Arnhem book, I don't think is very good. That doesn't say it's worthless, but I'd put 10 Market Garden books ahead of his. And the same for his D-Day book. I'd put 20 D-Day books ahead of Anthony Beevor's books. Where would I put Anthony Beevor's on the table with Ambrose? That's interesting. God, I think I'm going to put Ambrose higher. God, not much higher, because Ambrose's books read well. Does Beevor read well? I can't remember now. Haven't read. But yeah, Dominic, Arnhem book is his worst. Am I a Spitfire guy or a Hurricane? I'm a Mosquito guy, if I had to pick one. I know it's not, apples and oranges a bit, but and yeah, I can't help it. If a Spitfire flew over, you look it up and you go, whoa, because it's just the Spitfire does something. That's it. It's the Spitfire's a Spitfire, but I think I'm a Mosquito guy. Am I becoming ill? I don't know. Well, you see now I've said it, and where would you put Ambrose on? Would you put Beevor higher than Ambrose? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, based on the D-Day book, I'd put Ambrose higher than Beevor. As a historian, generally, I'd probably put Beevor higher than, because I think his Berlin and Stalingrad books were valuable. I don't know. Don't know now. PC is a historian, yeah, and a thoroughly bloody good bloke, as we say in English. Peter Caddick Adams, for those who don't know, he's a historian, and Peter is an all-rounder in that he was in the military and did very well with the British Army, and then he became a military advisor, and then he got his degree in history or degrees much later. So he wears multiple hats. So he's come at it from the point of view of serving his country and analyzing it to learning how to present history. So he's a consummate historian, and as I say, a thoroughly bloody nice bloke. And fiction. Well, this will be my last question. I'm still very confused about what I think about historical fiction and novels and things, because part of me thinks that if you're going to bother to sit down and write about World War II, write about real stuff, look in archives, write about real stuff, do the world a service by that investigative, analytical, archival approach of bringing a story to the world that hasn't been told. So the people who just write historical fiction, maybe they're squandering an opportunity to do, I'm going to say the words real history now. Yet, historical fiction and novels bring an audience that don't pick up non-fiction books. So, and I have to say that the book that I first read about the American Civil War was the Gettysburg one by Yashara fellow. What was it called? Killer Angels, where he's inventing dialogue between the generals and Lee and Longstreet and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm going against what I said there. I think it's back to being good or bad, isn't it? Very good historical fiction is a slice of the pie. It occupies a different area of the demographic than non-fiction does. So it brings people to like TVs, like comic. See, I love comics. I love my World War II comics. I love the writing of Garth Ennis, one of my favorite writers. Our favorite World War II writers is Garth Ennis. If you don't know who he is, look him up. Writes World War II, writes all sorts of stuff about Tuskegee Airmen and Russian snipers, and great writer. But his last one, The Lion and the something rather about the Chindits in Burma, fantastic. The Lion and the Eagle, Eagle and the Lion, fantastic book. It's comic, it's fiction, but he does include real characters in it. But he fictionalizes, their interactions with. He creates interactions with real characters with fictional characters. Flashman, yes, that's fiction, isn't it? Yeah, so I don't know. I've confused myself now. What do I think about Harry Turtledove? Now that name rings a bell, but I can't think what it is. Well, The Ship by C.S. Forrester. Yeah, great. Corsair's a great aircraft too. See, you should be doing these Ask Me Anything because you've got better opinions than I have. So there we are. I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to go and do some more work. David Stahl is impressive as well. So, yeah, I might have a beer and I'm going to get some shorts made to upload when I'm away. So that's it. I'll bring things to the end of there. I just want to say again, a heartfelt thank you to the World War II TV community. And again, thank you very much for... No, I'm not a Doctor Who fan. Never liked Doctor Who. Well, I watched some of the Tom Baker ones when I was a kid, but no, never been a Doctor Who fan. Thank you for helping to police the comments. Thank you for helping me with dealing with the bloody homophobic idiots on some of the messages. Thank you for coming in and supporting what I do. And, it's great. And I always feel that the odd, evangelical, religious homophobe, not that all religion is bad, but you know what I mean, who comes on and says they're not going to stop watching, they're going to stop watching World War II TV because I might do a show about gay people. I lose one of them, but I gain 10 more. So, thank you for making me stick to the straight and narrow of highlighting everybody's experiences, and the voices of gay people in World War II are as valid as the voices of straight people in World War II and everybody else as well. And I will not stop bringing those types of discussions to the channel because they're important. And so thank you very much for your support. Please, if you are not, consider becoming a patron, consider becoming a YouTube channel member, consider how to share and like and get more people in. But it's always good to talk to you all. But I'm going to have a beer now. And there we are. So I'm back to regular programming on so next Friday will be the Railways show with Peter Steer that was postponed from the Railways week back in whatever that was, October. That'll be the next regular show, but I'll be doing uploading some shorts I'll be uploading them tomorrow, or in fact now, but to premiere 4 or 5 a day, each day when I'm away. So you don't have to go without a bit of a Woody fix. Hi Norma, love you. And I'll have some English sausages and some fish and chips and stuff in England. And there we are. So I'm going to leave it there. This is Paul Woodadge for World War II TV saying I hope you enjoyed this impromptu Ask Me Anything. Thank you for the great questions. Apologies for not getting them all. And you gave me some things to think about. And I still don't know. I'm going to go to bed now. Where do I put Ambrose and Beaver on my Historian League table? I don't know. They're near the bottom, though, both of them. They're quite near the bottom. Cheers, everybody. Bye.